the Greens have really targeted that issue in taking on the government, and certainly that has proven successful in your part of the world, in Queensland, with the likes of Max Chandler-Mather holding up the government's Housing Australia Future Fund. But it seems an argument that's really targeted and resonating with renters, younger voters.
Yeah, I think that there are a significant portion of the population that do see housing as unaffordable and a real challenge, and it's something that I come across all the time. I know my nieces and nephews who are in their mid-20s and they've never not worked a day in their life. They are hard workers, but it is challenge being able to raise money to afford a house in the current environment. So I think that the government recognise this. We're doing what we can on the social and affordable housing, but we also have good programs in place for first home buyers as well, because we want to be able to assist those people get into the housing market, as generations of Australians have done before them. And we don't want that to be unaffordable for future generations as well.
How do you see this issue? And I know they're separate matters, but one feeds into the other, because when people are under the pump and becoming more angry with their own economic circumstances, it does have a potential flow-on effect to other issues and people's openness to an argument around something like the voice to Parliament. Do you think it makes that whole case and campaign more difficult?
Well, I think it could, Kieran, if you're not a competent and coherent government. And I think what we've proven in the 12 months that we've been in power is that we can take on those difficult challenges around the economy or around housing and put solutions in place and largely take the Australian people with us. And I think when it comes to the voice, for me, and I spoke in the Senate on this during the debate on the legislation, that there is a real practical element to this for me, and that is that governments of all persuasion continue to spend money on Indigenous issues without getting any results. And for me, governments in the future are going to continue to do that. So that's why I think the voice will be important, because we will be spending money, we'll be listening to those people it impacts, and it will make better use of that money at the same time. So I think that there is a really practical argument for the voice that I'm keen to make, and I'll certainly be doing that in the opportunity that I get between now and when the referendum is. And I think the important part of that is that I've been frustrated with the debate over the last couple of months because that has been dominated by politics and Parliament. I'm really pleased that that part is over and we can actually get on to focusing on the part that is going to make a difference on the ground. And I think that's when we'll see some significant movement, because I am convinced that this will help people on the ground, and that's what Australians want to do.
Can it still be won?
I definitely think it can still be won, Kieran. I think that what you see with published polls, and as much as politicians don't like to say they follow the polls, as you know, we often do, but they do bounce around. And what I am confident of is that that practical argument, because so many Australians want to do the right thing, they want to see advancement for Indigenous people in this country, they want us to be able to close the gap. I've got no doubt that if we actually have a voice that we are listening to, it will enable us to do that better and more efficiently. And that'll be a great outcome for government across the country if we actually are doing that in a more efficient way than what we've seen over the last 10, 20 years, where we've been spending money and haven't been closing the gap. So that, for me, is not an efficient way to do it.
Big few months with the Rugby World Cup looming, and big few years for Queensland with the Olympics a decade away, or a bit under that now. You were opening some rugby training facilities today. Talk us through it. What are the prospects here, and is there any link to the upcoming Olympic Games as well in terms of these facilities in Queensland?
Yeah, thanks, Kieran. As you know, someone who follows rugby, Ballymore has really been the spiritual home of rugby union in Queensland for probably 50 years, and it fell into disrepair, and there's been a proposal to develop it for many years now, and finally the federal and state governments contributed money, and they've built a fantastic facility where they've made use of the existing grounds. The great news is that the Wallaroos, so the female Australian rugby team, they'll be headquarters there. And these are state-of-the-art facilities, as good as anything I've seen in any of the football codes across the country, that they'll have access to as well as the existing Queensland men's and women's teams. And then over the next 10 years in the lead up to the Olympics, it will end up becoming the hockey centre for the Olympics as well. So it really is exciting to see good facilities that ensure that men's and women's teams are on an equal footing. But then we're starting to see that Olympic transformation as well. And that's really exciting for the city, the state, and I think the country in terms of what will be available for the community post-2032 and in the lead up to.